Hi, in this video we're actually going to talk about something that isn't necessarily specific to graphic storytelling or telling your story in comic books. It's going to be exaggeration, which can be used in comic book obviously and cartooning. This one's going to pertain more to cartoons, which is to say more of the goofy, funny side. So what's the difference between using exaggeration in comic books and cartoons? Not much, except that traditionally cartoons are usually more about gags and being humorous and comedy. And comic books, there are funny comic books, obviously, and have been, but a lot of times also the story is trying to be dramatic or having action or suspense and not so much comedy. But they're still using exaggeration, but in different ways. This particular video, we're going to concentrate on how to use it in cartoons. So let's give a definition of exaggeration first. The definition that I use is to stretch the truth. When you exaggerate, you're stretching the truth. What you're doing is you're taking something that's real or it's based on something that's real and you're going too far. You're getting carried away. You're going over the top. The example that I used in a previous video and that I've used in my classes is that if I get a little tiny cut on my finger and I say, "Oh no, take me to the hospital," I'm overreacting. I'm exaggerating my reaction. I probably don't need to go to the hospital. I probably just need a Band-Aid. If you go to school and you get out of school and you see your friend and your friend says, "Hey, what did you do in gym class today?" "Man, coach made us do 1,000,000 push-ups." Your friend knows that you didn't literally do 1,000,000 push-ups. They know that you mean a lot. You're exaggerating the amount to give an effect of it was a lot or it seemed like a lot. So these are things that we use in conversation. These are things that you've heard probably in your life when people exaggerate, but you know they're not trying to be literal. But they're taking something that's real and they're exaggerating. They're stretching the truth. They're going too far. They're getting carried away. So in this case, we're going to talk about facial expressions and how to exaggerate them. I should also talk about facial expressions, excuse me. So what does the phrase facial expression mean? Well, your facial is having to do with your face. To express something means to push it out or to show. So what you're doing is you're pushing out and showing your emotions, your feelings with your face. A lot of times you might hear the phrase, the look on a face. Do you see the look on that guy's face? What's his problem? Do you see the look on his face? So we know what that phrase means. The look on your face is a facial expression, which you're showing or giving off emotion with the face. So before we begin that, I want to talk, in my estimation and my observation of doing cartoons and comic books over the years, really you can break facial expressions, or human emotions, I should say, down into 4 groups or 4 types. These are like the basis that all others sort of are derived from. There are some that are interactive with our physical being, how we feel physically can affect our emotions and our thought process. But just to break them down into 4 basic categories. The first one is happy. Everybody hopefully knows what it means to be happy, and you can have varying degrees of happiness. Sad. Same thing. Everybody knows what it is to be sad at some point, presumably. And there's many varying degrees of that, going from kind of sad to absolute dark depression and everything in between. Then you have scared. We all know what scared is, and again, you have varying degrees. For example, to me, surprise is the small version of scared. If a monster jumps out and goes, "Ah," you go, "Oh, I'm scared." But if somebody tells you something that you didn't expect, you go, oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know you were going to say that. See how one is a very small version of the other. So surprise is a scaled down small version of scared. Anxiety or nervousness, like, oh, I've got a test tomorrow and I didn't study. I'm going to get a bad grade. Why didn't I study? That's a sense of fear of the test, but it's not the kind of fear that if a monster jumps out behind a tree to scare you. So you have varying degrees of that. And then you have angry. And again, you have varying degrees of angry, from being mildly perturbed or aggravated to absolute rage. So everything in between. So those are the 4 groups or 4 types of emotions, the basic emotions that humans exhibit. And then you can play with that scale up and down. And then you have, some people would argue that having no emotion or having a neutral emotional state is an emotion. And I think that's probably true, except it's very rare. Most people spend their lives, you know, cycling through one of those four previous emotions that I listed. Having no emotion or having a neutral state is probably very unlikely or very unusual. Perhaps if you were meditating and trying to divest yourself of all emotions, you'd be able to do that. But again, I think it's not something that normally or naturally happens in most people from moment to moment in their life. And also, it's a little harder to exaggerate, but we will talk about that in a minute. Okay, now we'll actually talk about drawing some of the facial expressions and exaggerating them in a very cartoony way. Let's start with happy. And one of the things that can be easily shown that it's an exaggerated cartoon is the size of the smile. It's so big that it's actually bigger than the character's face. And a lot of times when I do a very smiley face, I don't leave the eyes open. I actually kind of squint them, like they're laughing so hard that their eyes are closed. And I'm going to go through this with a pen real quick as a Sharpie, just to kind of show that it's better than a pencil. You can pick it up on the camera probably. So that's a real quick one that you can't probably see till I do this. So if you saw a character in real life, or a person whose mouth was bigger than their face, you'd be like, oh, that's not good. That's kind of weird. So this is what I mean by the eyes being closed. Sometimes you can put little laugh lines. His smile is literally bigger than his face. Let's do the opposite of happy, which of course we would think to be sad. So you don't want to draw someone who's, oh, I'm kind of sad, or it's a little sad today. You want to see somebody who is so upset. Man, this guy's upset. If you saw this cat coming down the street, you're like, wow, he is upset. And again, the eyebrows are a very expressive part of the face. Think about what your eyebrows do when you have different emotions, when what's going on. Great big crying mouth. He's very upset. And teardrops shooting out of the eyes. Again, I'm going to ink this in a minute with a Sharpie so you can see. Real quick so you can see what's going on a little bit easier. So teardrops, these are actually called ploods, at least when they're sweat jumping off of a character. But as you do the exact same thing coming out of the eyes, we know that it means crying. And the eyebrows kind of come up. Eyes are shut in this case. And this person won't have any hair, but this great big wailing mouth. He's clearly very upset about something. Now, let's do angry. Now, angry is kind of fun because it's something that you can exaggerate very easy, and there's different ways to show anger. So I'll just put in a real quick face here. What do the eyebrows do when you're angry? What do your eyebrows do? They kind of draw down towards the middle. And sometimes you can even exaggerate putting fire in the eyes as opposed to the pupils. And then have a real upset, angry mouth. And sometimes you can even put sharp teeth. And the ears are going to be important in this case. Now, what if I put little waving lines like, he's so angry you could just cook an egg on his head. He's so hot. I'm running out of room here. But steam or smoke shooting out of the ears. That's usually a really good sign that somebody is crazy upset, right? I know in manga a lot of times they'll put this little hash mark kind of thing here, which is supposed to represent like a vein on the forehead. They're so angry that veins are popping out of their head. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, that you're taking something that's real and exaggerating it. If somebody gets that upset that veins are popping out on their head, well, they're clearly upset. I'm going to run over a little bit on this other panel here a little bit. But here's another example. When you get angry, you feel like your head's going to explode. You feel like your head has steam coming out of the ears. But not really. That's an exaggeration. If I saw a person in real life with smoke coming out of their ears, I'd run away and hide. I'd call the army. And we'll give him some sharp teeth because he's super upset. The eyes kind of draw down towards the middle. The pupils are quite small, or sometimes you can put little fire in there. I want to put little heat lines coming off. Here's another thing you can do that's an exaggeration. Little devil horns. When you get so angry, you're like, ooh, I'm going to get that guy. Ooh, when I see him, he's going to get it. And then again, the eyebrows. Very, very important to show emotion with the eyebrows. It's a very expressive part of the face, the eyes and the brow. That if you could just see someone looking through a letterbox and all you saw were their eyes, you might be able to tell what their emotion was just based on that. So here we have a person who's also very, very upset about something. Let's move on. Let's go on to scared. Now, when a person is scared, what happens to your face? What happens to your face? Your eyes get really big, your mouth might open really wide, and you go, ah, I'm scared. That thing scared me. You can go even further in cartoons and comic books, but cartoons in this case. What's another thing that's a good indicator that a cartoon character is upset? Or not upset, excuse me, but is scared? Besides the eyes getting big, the eyebrows going up, the mouth opening, hair standing straight up. Can you defy gravity just because you're scared? Probably not, but in a cartoon you can. You can defy physics. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. In fact, I'm going to do one right now that you've probably seen before at some point. See if I can make this person look really, really scared out of their wits. Also, if you're working in color, which we're not today obviously, but if you're doing in color, when you have a character who's angry, a lot of times their face will turn red. That's kind of an exaggeration of something that's real. If you get really angry, your face might actually turn red. But in this case, you could have the hair turn white if it's not already. Having a character whose hair turns white instantly shows that they've been frightened. It's like a banshee jumps out and scares them so bad that their hair turned white. That's kind of based on something in real life too. It's very rare that a person has such a shock that their body starts to draw all the nutrients out of literally their follicles. But it is based on something real, however unlikely or rare. And here he's so scared that he literally has his eyes popping out of his head. I'm trying to draw this while looking around the camera, so this guy looks pretty scared to me. So he looks pretty upset. Okay, let's go on to a smaller version of scared, which I talked about previously earlier, that surprise. Surprise is the small version of scared. Someone who jumps out and just scares you to death. Your eyes are going to pop out. Your hair is going to stand up. Your mouth is going to get big. But what if someone does something that's on a much smaller scale that's unexpected or surprising? You don't want to show the eyes popping out. You can actually have the eyebrows up and the eyes wide open, probably not the hair standing up. But the difference, basically, the very main difference is between the mouth. That if I draw, let's say, a similar character, His eyes might get really big and go, oh, but they're not going to pop out of his head. His eyebrows will be arched. Give him a little same nose or similar nose. But here's the thing, the mouth shape becomes an O. You go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that makes more sense all of a sudden. Oh, I didn't expect someone to say that today. So large eyes, arched eyebrows. But here we have a mouth, and put a little shadow under it, and he's going, oh, I didn't know that. See how one is very large and one is smaller, comparatively speaking. Oops, dropping my pen. Now we'll do another one. This is more your mind, but it can affect your emotions. Let's do a face where someone is thinking. Now what happens when someone is thinking? They don't want to look forward. So you don't want to have your character looking straight ahead. You're actually going to have them looking up and to the side, one side or the other. And then I'm going to erase that a little bit. And then also here's a stereotypical action. Characters will stroke their chin or scratch their head to the point where you see someone scratching their head. It's almost an indicator that person is thinking, they're concentrating. Your head doesn't itch while you think. I hope that would be weird. But to show a character doing that actually makes sense. Now here's the other thing is you want to have kind of a straight face, or straight mouth, excuse me. But then the eyebrows, one is going to arch down like they're angry, and the other one will arch over like they're concentrating. So what happens, I look up as opposed to looking down or straight ahead. And the reason for that is, I might even draw a little hand going out to scratch his head. The reason that you don't look straight ahead, let me get back to that, is because if I was trying to remember something important or think of the solution to a problem or remember something or concentrate and I look straight ahead and I see you, I'll get distracted. So what do? I look up and to the side. So we'll start with his eyes and we'll make sure he's looking up and to the side. Then we'll give him his eyebrows. I'll just run all this fun stuff in here. And here we have him scratching. Trying to remember the answer to that problem. So here we have someone who's thinking or trying to remember. His eyebrow kind of got lost a little bit. Let's go on to another one. Now this one is really, I think, the hardest one to do. I think it's really the hardest thing to exaggerate. Bored. Because what happens when you're bored? You shut down. You have no emotions. You have very little activity. It's like saying, I'm bored. Are you bored? It's so boring. There's no excitement. There's no action. There's no interactiveness. You're just sitting there going, gosh, I'm bored. So showing zero is much harder to exaggerate. Taking an emotion like happy or sad or scared and taking it all the way from 0 to 10, exaggerate it as far as possible, but staying at 0 and exaggerating 0, that's, to me, probably the toughest thing to exaggerate when it comes to cartoons. So again, I'm going to start with the eyes, and I'm going to give them kind of heavy lids, and I'm barely going to show the pupil. So being tired, physically tired, is going to have a lot in common with being bored because you have this lack of activity, you have this lack of energy, and nothing's really going on. So there's really nothing happening. The mouth is neutral, it's kind of straight. The eyebrows are neutral, there's nothing going on there. The eyelids are heavy, you can barely keep your eyes open. So being tired and being bored can have similar views. It can look in a similar manner, especially in a cartoon form. I'm just barely going to put a dot just under the eyelid. Neutral eyebrows. Give this guy some stubble just to be fun. He's so bored he forgot to shave. So here's a guy, oh, I guess I was out of frame. Here's a guy who looks kind of bored. He doesn't look like really much is going on. Doesn't really seem too excited about anything. Now we're going to come to another one. Now again, this can actually affect both your emotions and your physical reactions, but this one is just fun to do, and to me it's LOVESTRUCK. Someone who's in love. Now there's different ways of doing it. Because in a cartoon you have things coming up out of their head. You have little hearts coming out of their head, or they're thinking of a heart. In the old cartoons, the person would fall in love and you would see their heart literally beat, don't move the camera, you would see their heart literally beating through their chest, through their clothes, pushing out. It may feel like that when you're in love. It may actually feel like your heart is beating through your chest, I'm sure, but it's not really doing it. So again, you're coming back to that idea of a thing that's real and exaggerating it. Now another thing that every character in love has is a great big grin, a great big dopey grin, because they're in love. Or you can alternatively show them whistling. A lot of times you'll see a character who's whistling and being in love because they feel very happy, they have no cares, they're so carefree because they're in love that they can just walk down the street whistling like because everything's going good. But then you have to have little hearts bubbling up out of their heads, or thinking of one big heart sometimes. But yeah, when you see a character and they've got hearts floating up out of their body or their head, you know what's happening. You know they're in love. And again, they got this great big smile, this great big grin. Happy eyebrows. And we'll do some hearts. You guys can see that. I'm doing real quick and messy. This character's clearly been smitten and is in love. Now we got one more we're going to do, and this one to me is really, it's not an emotion technically. This last one I'll do on this page. It's technically not an emotion, it is physical, but it can definitely affect your emotions, but it's just really fun to draw because it's so much fun to exaggerate. And that is, of course, dizzy. Someone who's been hit in the head with a frying pan, they're going to be dizzy. And one thing you can do is to show spirals for eyes. If you've ever been hit in the head and been made dizzy, you have a hard time focusing your eyes. They might look different directions. Sometimes you even draw the eyes with the pupils looking out in different directions. And then I'll get my nose, and then have his tongue kind of hanging out here a little bit. And then the thing is, have little tornadoes kind of coming up out of them, little curlicues coming up out of their head. And then you're going to have things in orbit around their head. You're going to have stars and planets orbiting their head. And the way I do that is I don't do it, if you can't really see it in pencil, I'm going to ink it. I don't put it like a like a horizontal halo around their head. I, in fact, tilt it because it kind of gives a sense that that person is wobbly. They can't hold their head up straight, as opposed to just being circling their head. These are in orbit around their head, but a little bit less organized. It's a little bit messier. It's a little bit, wow, I can't hold my head up. I'm dizzy. I got hit with a frying pan. So now, to make it look like it's in orbit, we do that. And then I'll put the head in. And I'm going to do some spiral eyes. And I always make the eyes go in different directions, the spirals that is. The little tongue hanging out there. And then I'm also going to do these little tornadoes. And this guy is clearly, something's gone wrong in his day if he's looking like that. So here we have, hold this up. Here we have happy, incredibly happy, a little too happy. Sad, he's clearly upset. Angry, don't mess with that guy. Scared, something has definitely frightened this person. A little more on the surprise side. This guy thinks he's thinking about something, he's concentrating. Kind of bored, nothing really going on. Man, this guy is in love, and you can tell. And Mr. got hit in the head with an anvil over here. He's clearly quite dizzy. In fact, a little too much dizzy. So, these are just some examples of how to exaggerate facial expressions in cartoon form. I hope this is fun. I hope this is informative. If anybody has any questions, feel free to message me or leave comments. I'll be glad to try to get back and answer those. Hope everybody's staying safe out there, and we'll see you soon.